So before anybody even says it, yes, I know that there are people that work alongside doing a doctoral degree. I know that this is very common in the education field, very common in nursing and public health. But in this video, I'm really talking about those people who are going to pursue PhDs where working is not an option, where you cannot work on the side because of the intensity of the program. Those are the people I'm talking about. So if that describes you, then this video is for you. So I wanted to make this video because a couple years ago, there was somebody that sent me a message and they were working a six-figure job with, I think, their bachelor's degree, and they were going to pursue a PhD. And they sent me a message to ask, do you think I should quit my six-figure job and go pursue a PhD? And at the time, I made a video, and the summation of that video was really, it was up to them, because I never wanted to tell people what to do, to be honest. But in my opinion, in my little opinion, I felt like he had reached a place in his career where he was doing really well, and I was asking him, what's a PhD going to add or subtract from you at this point? Sometimes it may not be necessary for you to get an additional degree, but I understand that for some people it's really to fulfill a personal goal. It may not, yes, necessarily have an impact on their career. They just want to do it, or they love to learn. That's fair enough. But I also understand the real life situation of, having to pay your bills, having to take care of your kids, having to take care of your family, having financial responsibilities. And sometimes when you go pursue a PhD, even when you're paid a stipend, that stipend is not a whole lot to cover everything that really adulting is all about. And so yes, let's talk about why a job might be better than getting a PhD. So the first advantage, I would say, somebody that goes straight from college or maybe even a master's degree into a job, is that you will gain valuable work experience, right? And I feel like sometimes gaining valuable work experience, if later on you want to go do your PhD, will even give you a richer insight into the PhD, right? So yes, you can do, you can go back to back, school back to back, and then finish with whatever it is you're doing before you go to work. But I feel like the people that end up entering the workforce earlier on end up, number one, gaining a ton of job experience. Number two, they end up becoming a little bit more financially stable earlier on in life, right? And I'm not just talking about pay. Think about things like retirement accounts. Think about things like even saving up money to purchase or build a house. There's so many benefits in my mind to somebody who enters the workforce earlier and who decides to forfeit a PhD. Doesn't mean that people with PhDs cannot catch up, but I find that a lot of the time, these people end up having a leg up because they've been in the workforce like 5-6 years before the person with a PhD is joining. Now, somebody recently, when I sent out my weekly newsletter, which you can join at this link right here, you just go to theboldphd.com/careers list, right? So somebody had responded to my newsletter and they were saying, yeah, I know that, when you get a doctorate, you can walk it up faster, which is kind of true, that when you have a doctorate, you can end up getting promoted faster than, let's say, somebody who doesn't, but that's not necessarily always the case. Okay, so the one thing that I think having a job has over getting a PhD is gaining that valuable, oh so valuable work experience. I've talked about this, but let's also talk about the financial implications of getting a PhD. Now, in certain disciplines, you can definitely get a stipend for pursuing a PhD. A lot of the time in the pharmaceutical sciences and in the biomedical sciences and engineering, you can get a stipend for pursuing your PhD. But not every discipline has this, and in some disciplines, they actually have to pay tuition for their PhDs. So from a financial standpoint, and a lot of people in the United States, I don't know about other places, have to take out student loans in order to make this happen. So now you're taking out these hefty student loans, which, by the way, if you did not know, if you take out a student loan in the United States, it is the kind of debt that never gets canceled. Every kind of debt can be canceled except for student loan debt. It's that lifelong, right? And so people take out these hefty student loan debt, and you know, you've been watching this channel. I've talked about my story, struggling for 2 years, not getting a job and all that. So imagine having to, you know, pay all that money, finishing and not really being guaranteed a job, or if you are in academia, being paid, you know, a pittance essentially in some cases to be teaching and doing all this work. And earlier on, I also touched on the fact that, you know, compensation, right? You end up earning faster if you go into the workforce earlier on. You also get benefits like health insurance, benefits like 401ks, retirement accounts, HSAs. These are all things that can build up your financial future. And sometimes the difference of 5 to 6 years of contributing to a retirement account, of contributing to HSA, of all of these things ends up putting some people in a much better financial space than somebody that ended up going to pursue a PhD, which, yes, I see the unfairness in all of that, but hey, it's how the world runs. A job can also help you clarify your research interest. So let's say that eventually you do want to get the PhD, which, you know, fabulous. You want to get that PhD, but you choose to work for a while first. I feel like a job will give you a industry basis, especially for those of us in the sciences, right? It will give you a really good, if you end up going to work in industry, it gives you a really good industry basis. You get to see so many things. You get to see how things work in real life. Sometimes when you are in school, right, and you're doing things are very theoretical. Of course, you are working on a project and that project is moving ahead, but it's very theoretical until you're out there applying what it is that you learned, right? If you end up going back, having had work experience out there, you'll be able to say, oh, this and this and that is what I'm interested in. Now, I feel like this is really important because for me, right, I went from college and I got a second degree and then I went into a PhD. I feel like I didn't really have a grasp on what I wanted my research topic area to be. And I sort of fell into the research topic area that I ended up doing my dissertation on. And it was fine. I enjoyed it. I love a good challenge. You know, I was productive. But in hindsight, if I had the opportunity, I feel like it would have been great to learn what I was really interested in. So for instance, when I was going into my PhD program, I thought that I wanted to have an understanding of the pathogenesis of disease, right? Disease pathogenesis. I had that thought, like it was just a vague idea. So I went into the PhD program. It was a microbiology and immunology program, and couldn't really define what it is that I wanted. And I don't feel like I'm alone in this, right? I'm just saying that I feel that somebody with work experience will come into that with way more knowledge than I would have. And so, you know, that's another reason why getting a job may be better than pursuing a PhD right out, you know, the gate. Going out there into the workforce also gives you the opportunity to build a professional network, right? I've talked a little bit about it on this channel, but I've talked more about it on LinkedIn, where I talk about networking and how having a network can be the difference between struggling for 6 months to find a job and finding somebody that connects you with a job. And so joining the workforce instead of going to get a PhD could give you a leg up on your professional network. Now, that's not to say that when you're in a PhD program, you cannot build your network. Actually, you really can, right? And so make sure you're always talking to people. Make sure if you're, you know, maybe you're already in a PhD program right now, I'm going to tell you right here, networking will change your life. And it doesn't have to be slimy. And it's not about exchanging business cards and numbers. It's about building and cultivating relationships. And those people don't have to be your best friends. Just, hey, hi, how are you doing? Can you tell me a little bit about your job. Like, do these little things and get on people's radars who could potentially help you when the time comes. I feel like if you join the workforce earlier, you have the opportunity to do that more than when you're in a PhD program. Because most of the time when you're in a PhD program, you're sort of focused on the research and your dissertation, right? And so networking isn't something that you really think about. But in a job, you might be able to build that up faster. In some cases, having work experience could actually make you a super competitive PhD candidate, right? I don't know about other PhD programs, but I remember going into my PhD program, a lot of us were in our mid-20s, a lot of us were coming right out of college. Maybe a few of us had 1 or 2 years of experience out there in the work world. But one of the things that I find is when you go into interviews and you've had work experience and you can talk, intelligently on a topic, let's say you've been working on a particular cell type in industry and now you're going back to get your PhD, you can have those really deep conversations. And again, it ties back to what I was saying earlier about really being clear about the kind of research you want to pursue as you go into a PhD. Work experience can give you that. And so in some cases, work experience could make you really competitive because of how much knowledge you've gathered, how much you know, and how well you articulate the topic with academics. And like I said, the decision is going to be up to you as to whether you really want to go get a job and get that work experience before you get a PhD, or get that work experience instead of going to get a PhD. Whichever way you choose to go, I want you to be happy with it. I just did this video because sometimes I find that people will maybe beat themselves up over the fact that they haven't pursued a master's or a PhD, or maybe they got a master's and they feel like getting a PhD is the next thing. Or sometimes people even just go pursue a PhD because they're not finding a job and they think a PhD is going to open up the doors for them. And I've said this often, that it's really important for you to consider if getting a PhD really is the right decision for you. It really may not. In some cases, I have told friends who are brilliant, who have great jobs, who are doing well, you probably don't need a PhD. However, if it's a personal goal, if you feel like it's going to enhance your career, you've really done the research on that, and you know that it's going to enhance your career, help you move up faster, all that good jazz, then absolutely. But don't forget that there may be an opportunity for you to gain a lot of growth, gain a lot of financial stability, and so much more by getting a job instead of pursuing a PhD. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I really would love to hear from you.